Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today into something, well, pretty mind-bending.
Yeah, definitely mind-bending.
We're talking about the interconnected universe. Where consciousness and quantum physics and reality they all seem to kind of blend together.
It's a fascinating area.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at, we got a lot of different sources, scientific studies, historical accounts, personal anecdotes even. Do you ever wonder if your thoughts, really have more power than you think they do?
It's a question a lot of people have, for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to see what we can find out about that today.
What's really interesting to me is how this topic goes beyond just theories. We're talking about real experiences, hard science, mixed with these glimpses into, the really unknown parts of reality.
Right. So, okay, let's start with this idea of an interconnected universe. Have you ever heard of this concept of the universe being like a giant hologram?
It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it's actually an idea that some pretty respected physicists, people like David Bohm and Reprogram, have put forward.
Okay, so what does that even mean? What do they mean by the universe being a hologram?
Imagine like a 3D puzzle. And every tiny piece of that puzzle, somehow it contains a miniature image of the whole picture.
Wow.
Right? It's kind of like that. That's the holographic universe idea. Every part, no matter how small, has information about the whole thing encoded in it.
Okay, but how does that connect to us, to our human consciousness? How are those two related?
Well, think about how our brains work for a minute.
Right.
We're constantly taking in all the sensory information, right? Light, sound, smells, but somehow our brain turns all that into a coherent experience.
Yeah.
What if our brains are actually acting like holograms themselves? What if they're taking all these frequencies, this jumbled mess, and turning it into what we experience as this solid three-dimensional world?
Whoa. That's a really interesting idea. But I mean, is there any actual evidence to back that up, this whole holographic brain thing?
There are definitely some clues out there. Think about phantom limb syndrome, for example. People who've lost a limb often still feel sensations where that limb used to be.
Right.
It's as if their brains are holding on to this holographic memory of the limb, even though it's not there anymore.
It's kind of creepy, but also pretty amazing. So, okay, if reality is more like a hologram than we think, does that mean that our thoughts can actually, change the physical world around us?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And the interesting thing is, there's a lot of research that suggests it might be possible.
Really?
Think about the placebo effect, for instance. People experience real benefits from, say, a sugar pill.
Yeah.
Just because they believe it's a real drug. That belief, even though it's not based on, the actual physical substance, it creates a measurable effect.
Right. So it's our beliefs have power.
Exactly. Have you ever experienced something like that, where just believing in something seemed to make it real?
Now that you mention it, I remember when I was a kid, I was convinced that a certain song would always play on the radio whenever I got in the car.
Really?
Yeah, and, for a long time, it actually did.
It's like you were influencing the radio waves.
Yeah, it felt like it, at least. So it's not just, anecdotal, though. There's actual research on this.
Definitely. There are studies showing that mental imagery, like visualization, can actually have a real impact on healing, for example. Dr. Carl Simonton's work with cancer patients is a great example.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. He had them use visualization, like picturing themselves getting better, right?
Exactly. And some of these patients had these amazing recoveries.
So are you saying, that just by imagining themselves getting better, they were actually able to influence their body's healing processes?
It's a very complex issue, and there's still so much we don't understand. But the research seems to suggest that our minds might have a much more direct influence on our physical reality than we ever thought before.
Wow. And that leads us to an even more mind-boggling concept, right?
Yeah.
Psychokinesis.
Yeah.
The ability to influence matter just with your mind.
Now we're getting into some pretty fringe science territory.
Right. Moving objects with your mind. I've always been a bit skeptical about that stuff.
I understand the skepticism. It does sound like something straight out of a movie.
It really does.
But there have been some pretty intriguing studies done in controlled labs using these things called random event generators, or RGs.
Okay, RGs, and what do those do?
Basically, they just spit out random sequences of numbers. But the interesting thing is, some people seem to be able to influence the output of these machines just by thinking about it.
Wait, you mean like they can make the machine produce specific numbers just by thinking about it? How is that even possible?
That's the big question, isn't it? The results are often pretty subtle, but they're statistically significant enough to suggest that something interesting is going on.
Right, okay, so
And if we think back to that idea of the holographic universe, it raises a question. Could these people be tapping into some deeper level of reality, a place where that separation between mind and matter isn't so rigid?
okay, now that is wild. But I mean, are there any real-world examples of this mind over matter stuff? Or is it all just, happening in these lab experiments?
Well, those lab studies are fascinating,
Yeah.
but they do make you wonder, can any of this happen in the real world?
Right.
And the answer is, there are some pretty intriguing accounts out there.
Oh, like what?
One that comes to mind is this case of a Philippine psychic healer that was studied by Lyle Watson.
Wait, Lyle Watson, the biologist who wrote that book about how everything's interconnected. What did he find with this healer?
He was studying all sorts of unexplained phenomena, and he had a personal encounter with this healer who was said to be able to, make incisions appear on people's skin just by concentrating on them. Yeah, Watson actually volunteered to be part of a demonstration, and he ended up with an incision on his hand.
Whoa, hold on. He actually got cut, without any physical contact.
That's right.
That sounds both amazing and terrifying. Was there, any scientific explanation for how that could even happen?
That's the thing. Watson was a scientist.
Right.
And he couldn't explain it. He wrote about the experience in his book, but he admitted that it really challenged his understanding of, the limits of reality.
Wow. So it wasn't just some trick or something.
No, and his account isn't the only one. There are all these stories from all over the world about people who seem to have these inexplicable abilities to influence the physical world.
So are you saying that these psychic healers are, bending the laws of physics or something?
It's hard to say for sure without, more scientific investigation. But if we entertain the idea that our minds aren't bound by space and time the way we traditionally think of them, then maybe these accounts start to make a little more sense.
Okay, so influencing the physical world is one thing, but what about accessing information that seems to be beyond our normal reach? Could this holographic universe idea explain things like precognition? Or even past lives?
It's an interesting connection to make.
Yeah.
I mean, if the information of the universe is holographic, then maybe it's not so crazy to think that some people might be able to tap into that information in ways that go beyond our usual linear perception of time.
So you're saying it's possible that the past and the future are more accessible than we think, that we're not just limited to the present moment.
It's definitely a mind-bending idea, but there's some interesting research to consider.
Like what?
Well, for example, there was this Polish engineer, Stefan Osawicki. He was studied for what they call psychometric abilities.
Psychometric abilities, what does that even mean?
Basically, he claimed to be able to hold an object and see visions of its past.
Wow, like a psychic detective or something.
Yeah, kinda. Researchers actually documented his ability to accurately describe events and people associated with objects, even though he'd never seen those objects before. It's like he was tapping into some kind of energy imprint left on the object.
That's amazing. It's like something straight out of a mystery novel. But okay, let's say that's possible. What about the future? Can we really see into the future like those fortune tellers at the carnival?
Well, predicting specific events with 100% accuracy is a different matter.
Yeah.
But the concept of precognition, the ability to perceive future events, has been studied in various ways. Some research has focused on analyzing people's dreams.
Oh, dreams, yeah.
Looking for, patterns or symbols that might foreshadow real-life events.
I've definitely had some weird dreams that have come true in strange ways.
Right. But is there any, actual scientific evidence to support this idea of precognitive dreaming?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Well, it's tough to study scientifically, but there have been some intriguing findings.
For example, some researchers have analyzed dreams that were reported before major events, things like natural disasters or political upheavals, and they found some statistically significant correlations between, the dream imagery and the actual events.
Okay, that's pretty wild. So you're saying that our dreams might be tapping into some kind of information field that goes beyond, time and space.
That's a possibility, isn't it?
It is. Could this also explain things like near-death experiences, where people report having these out-of-body experiences, seeing a tunnel of light?
Near-death experiences are fascinating, aren't they? People often describe them as glimpses into a reality that's beyond our everyday perception.
Yeah, it's like they're seeing something we can't.
And a lot of the features of near-death experiences, like the feeling of being outside of time and space, they align with the concepts we've been discussing.
I've always been curious about NDEs. They seem to suggest that consciousness might not be entirely dependent on the physical body, you know?
Right.
But is there any way to study these experiences scientifically?
It's definitely challenging.
Yeah.
But some researchers have tried to capture some objective data during NDEs.
Oh, really?
Well, for example, there have been cases where people have accurately described events that were happening in the hospital, while they were clinically dead.
Really?
Even though there's no way they could have known about those events through their normal senses.
That's incredible. So it's almost like their consciousness was detached from their body, and they were able to see things from a different perspective.
Exactly. And that's where things get really, really mind-boggling.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in.
If consciousness can operate outside the limitations of the pphysical body and linear time, then what does that tell us about the true nature of reality?
That's a big question. It feels like we've fallen down the rabbit hole and landed in a whole new dimension.
It can definitely feel that way. But even as we explore these extraordinary possibilities, it's important to remember that there are still so many mysteries to unravel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even without all the answers, it's fascinating to think about these ideas and consider what they mean for our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
I agree. And as we've been talking about all these mind-blowing concepts, I keep thinking about how much we still don't know about the natural world, even right here on Earth.
Oh, for sure. We get so caught up in these grand cosmic ideas that we forget about the incredible wonders that are, right in our own backyard. I know what you mean. It's like we've been talking about these almost supernatural human abilities, but what about all the incredible things that other living beings can do? Animals, for instance.
That's a great point. We get so focused on human consciousness that we forget that we share this planet with this whole web of life. And there are some truly mind-boggling things happening in the animal kingdom.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, how is it that a dog can sense when its owner's coming home, even if they're miles away?
It's like they have a sixth sense.
I know. Or think about birds migrating across continents, navigating with pinpoint accuracy. It's like they have some kind of internal GPS that's way more advanced than anything we've invented.
It really is incredible. And scientists are still trying to figure out exactly how they do it.
Yeah, what are the theories?
Well, some think that animals might be more sensitive to these subtle energy fields, like the Earth's magnetic field, than we are.
That makes sense. We were just talking about the human aura and how it might interact with the Earth's energy fields. Maybe animals have like a similar energy field that's even more refined, and that allows them to sense things that we can't even perceive.
It's a definite possibility. And it might also explain some of the seemingly telepathic communication that happens between animals, especially between, mothers and their offspring.
Oh, right. Like how a mother cat just seems to know where her kittens are, no matter how far they wander off.
Yeah, exactly.
Or how a flock of birds can all change direction at the exact same time, as if they're reading each other's minds.
Right. Those examples, they really challenge our traditional understanding of how communication works.
They do. And then you have the just incredible feats of strength and endurance that some animals display.
Oh, yeah.
Like ants that can lift many times their own weight, or salmon swimming upstream for hundreds of miles to return to their spawning grounds. It makes you wonder where they get all that energy from.
Right. It's like they have access to some hidden reserves of strength and vitality that we humans have kind of lost touch with.
All this makes me wonder if we've really underestimated the intelligence and abilities of other species. I mean, we tend to think of ourselves as the most intelligent beings on the planet, but maybe intelligence exists in so many forms that we haven't even begun to comprehend.
I think that's a very insightful point. We define intelligence in these very human-centric terms.
Yeah, we do.
But there are probably other ways of knowing and perceiving the world that we're just starting to get a glimpse of.
It's a humbling thought.
It is.
But also really exciting. It opens up this whole new realm of possibilities for understanding life on Earth and our place within it.
And maybe by studying these other forms of intelligence, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of all living things and the hidden potentials that lie within ourselves as well.
This whole deep dive has been such an amazing journey. We've explored so many fascinating ideas, from this concept of a holographic universe to the possibility of a global consciousness field that connects us all.
It's been quite the whirlwind tour of the mysteries of consciousness and the nature of reality.
It has, and it's clear that we've only scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, just barely.
There's so much more to explore and discover.
Absolutely, but I think the most important takeaway is that we should never stop questioning, never stop exploring,
Right.
and always be open to the possibility that there's more to the universe than meets the eye.
I couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there, keep that sense of wonder alive.
Yeah, keep exploring.
And who knows what incredible insights you might uncover on your own journey of discovery. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the interconnected universe. Until next time.